March of 1984.
Now, the black church writ large has been a sanctuary, a place of truth-telling, a place of relative safety for hundreds of years. And at the same time, particularly in the South, but not only, the evangelical white church has been growing more and more right-wing now for decades. Now, as a young man, did you start sensing this tension between your own church and the growing moral majority and all the other evangelical movements that were growing?
You've used a lot of terms that I don't use the same way, so it's going to take me a little bit to pat that.
I've got all night.
Okay, first of all, I'm an evangelical. The black church has been traditionally evangelical. The term was hijacked because in the Bible, theologically, there's no such thing as an evangelical that does not begin with a critique of systems of economic injustice. And when Jesus, the ultimate evangelical, right, that brown-skinned Palestinian Jew, that was born in Bethlehem, raised in Nazareth, the ghetto, right, the poor place, his first sermon said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to preach good news." That's evangel. That's what that means. To the poor. If your attention is not on dealing with the issues that hurt the poor, the brokenhearted, the sick, the left out, the least of these, the stranger, and all of those who are made to feel unacceptable, you don't have right-wing evangelicalism, you have heresy.
Is that what you would call?
Yes. Yeah. You have theological malpractice. It doesn't fit Orthodox Christianity. What we've had.
So let's break it down for a second. How do you account for the fact that Donald Trump, whose behavior and rhetoric and past is in no way a moral avatar, and his interest in religion is of recent vintage, and yet his support was extremely high in that community, broadly defined.
That's right. By that particular group, it was opposed in a way, but yes, okay. And that's where you see now, I think where we can see it so clearly. Kevin Cruz in his book, and others have documented this, when they wanted to speak against, for instance, Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal, and they wanted to take over elements of the Christian pulpit, they came up with this weird theology. If you're good, you go to heaven. If you're bad, you go to hell. If you're good, you're wealthy. If you're bad, you're in poverty. It's actually a strange form of Calvinism that just is abusive to Calvinism in itself.
Calvinism with private planes.
No, right. And so,
does Creflo Dollar bother you in that way?
Any of those that simply preach in that way, because it is not consistent with Orthodox theology. It's not consistent with the theology of the Bible. It's not consistent with the critique. But let me make one point.
But how did Trump get such wide support?
That's what I'm saying. But if in fact in your theology says whoever is good is wealthy, then you would fawn over a wealthy businessman, right? Because his purse strings.
Despite his moral behavior.
Because maybe the religion you're promoting isn't really about moral behavior. Maybe it's really a purchased religion, like paid puppets of the empire. Because anytime a religion seems to say the only moral issues are prayer in the school, where you stand on abortion, being against a woman's right to choose, private property, and making sure you can prove that Jesus was a founding member of the NRA. That is not Christianity. Think about it. This is how you can see it, my brother Remedy. They're so loud on things like abortion and prayer in the school, and so wrong and so quiet on things like health care and living wages and acceptance of all people and treating the poor. Now, there are 3,500 scriptures in the Bible about love and justice and mercy and how you treat the stranger and how you help the least of these. And it's not talking about private charity either. It's talking about how we shape society. It's talking about the nations. Jesus said, when I will say to the nations when I was hungry, not to individuals, to the nation. That's government. 3,500 scriptures. There may be 3 scriptures about homosexuality. None of them trump the scripture that says you got to love your neighbor as yourself. So how do you claim to be a conservative if you dismiss 3,500 texts, but then build a whole theology around 3 scriptures and most of them you misinterpret? That's not conservative. That's not, because conservative means to hold on to the essence of.
How do you deal with a complex moral issue like abortion in your church, where I would bet there's not unanimity in the people?